Hello, my name is Rene Castro, and welcome to Building Video Games with Python, Lesson 5. In previous lessons, we became familiar with various objects that were available to us through the game library. And in the very last one, we introduced the game loop, the part of the code that we have that's actually going to iterate over our game as long as the game isn't over. In this particular lesson, we're going to explore a little bit more about images, because now that we have a game loop, let's make our images do something. So let's get to it. So here's our game. Just as review, we've loaded up the library, we've created our variables to represent our various things in our game. We've manipulated them by resizing them. Here's our game loop. We've drawn the background image and the zombie. We've updated the game, and then once the game is over, we quit the game. One thing I want to get to before I want to discuss before we move on to actually moving our images is a common mistake some of my students make, which is to put things in an incorrect order. Now, the program's not going to give you a syntax error, but if you kind of think about a comment I've made earlier in some of the lessons, a computer is dumb. It simply does the instructions in the order that you tell it. So what we're doing here is we're telling the computer to draw, the program to draw the zombie and then to draw the background. Now the problem with that is that the background's huge. It covers the whole screen. So if you tell it to draw the zombie and then on top of that draw the background, you're not going to see anything. So let me demonstrate that. And there it is. And there's, students will tell me, Mr. Castro, there's no error. You always tell us to look for errors. But I still don't see the zombie. So this is called the logical error. In that, again, there's nothing wrong, physically wrong with what we wrote. It's just the order that we did things didn't produce the output that we wanted. So let's put it back to where it was. So in this particular lesson, our main goal is to kind of move the zombie around. Now, because the zombie is an image, it leads us to look at the image object in the game library. So let's scroll down to it. And let's see if we can find something that kind of screams at us, move me. Now, you might recall from various other scrolling through the image objects that there is a move function. So instead of drawing the zombie, let's move it. Save it. Let's run it. The zombie's there, but it's not moving. So some students might say, oh, the computer's not doing anything. The program's not doing anything. But there was something hidden in that the move actually draws the zombie as well. Because here's another common mistake that students will simply add to the code. So they'll leave the zombie.draw in and then move it as well. This creates an awkward kind of blur effect, which again, for some games you might actually want that. But for most games, you simply want to move the image, not necessarily draw the image and then move it. Because again, it's going to create two different images, resulting in a blur effect. So we're going to take that out. Alright, so we found a function that kind of gave us the indication that it's going to move the image, but it doesn't actually move it. So we got to kind of find something else in here, a missing piece of the puzzle to make the zombie move. So let's kind of scroll through. Alright, set speed. So the idea here is that we're telling the zombie to move, but it doesn't know at what speed to move or what angle to move at. So we're going to do this outside of our game loop. So we're going to kind of set the speed and the angle for the zombie to move at before the game even starts. So because we want to do something with the zombie, we're going to write zombie first. And what is it that we want to do with the zombie? Well, we want to set its speed. So we're going to write set speed. If you look at the parameters, the first thing it wants is a speed. So let's give it a speed of, let's say, 6. And the next thing it wants is an angle. Now this negative 999, again, it's not as obvious as some of the other default values we've discussed, but it has to do something with this if statement. For right now, just ignore it and realize that you can specify an angle. Remember, a default value just simply means that if we don't specify it, this is the value that it gets. But we can specify an angle. So let's specify an angle of 60. Let's save it. Let's run it. Hey, the zombie's moving. But you'll notice it goes off the screen. So one of the things we want in our particular game is for the zombie not to go off the screen. So let's go back to our game library. And now that we have something moving, we might want to kind of explore maybe some other functions to kind of keep it within the window. But the solution actually resides in the original move command. So if you look at the move function, you'll see that we have a parameter called bounce, and by default it's set to false. So what do you think we need to do in order for it to bounce? Right. So we somehow need to provide bounce the value of true. Now what some students do, they'll go in here and they'll change this to true, because it's kind of intuitive that if false doesn't have it bounced, then true would. The thing is, that would be the wrong solution, because at that point what you're doing is you're modifying the game library. The better solution would be to realize this is a parameter. This is just the default value that it gets if you don't give it a value. So what we can do is that when we call the move function, we provide a value of true. This value of true will replace the value of false, and then use that value of true for bounce throughout the rest of the code. So let's save it, try it, and there you go. The zombie's moving. So I'm going to leave it up as an exercise for you to do, to also get the turkey bouncing around. As review for this particular lesson, realize that first you have to set the speed of the particular image you want to move, and then you have to simply move it, and then if you want it to bounce around the screen, you provided a value of true. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. So in this particular lesson, we practice more of the exploring through the game library. We definitely dived a little bit more into default values, as two of our functions that we used in this particular lesson use default values that we had to override. And we finally got our images moving in our game. So in the next lesson, we're going to see what we can do with these images. Thank you for watching.